Hello. Well, tonight's going to be a lot warmer. Finally. This is the fourth day. We had either 3 or 4. I think 4 nights where it went into the high 30s, and it snowed during 2 of those days and overnight one of those nights. Even though it's currently May 13th, 2020, we just one of those freak things that happened. Pittsburgh doesn't usually get snow this late. So, right before the snowstorm, I did a walkabout, and I also just started repeating it and maxed out the storage on my phone, so we're going to do it again. Just going to repeat the path that I took for that first walkabout, and take a look at everything, and hopefully we'll be able to have a good look and see how everything went. We started with the apple, and the apple actually did way better than I thought it would, and it'll be really interesting as the season goes along to see what the difference between these flowers that did perfectly fine without coverage and the ones that advanced inside, because there's actually not still flowers left inside. Actually, the focal distance is pretty good. They've advanced to what I'm guessing is little mini apples. I'm just hoping that they got fertilized before that happened, because it was so cold those nights, and those definitely had petals, just like the ones above. They had petals before they went into the protection. So, in the last video, I do believe the next thing I talked about was the fact that the pear hasn't had flowers in years, and this is no exception, so I didn't worry about it. And then when I was starting this last video, I did show this. Do you remember the hardy kiwi? This is the part that was above its protection. All of the leaves except a random 2 that weren't covered have completely scorched off, and I'm thinking those may have opened up after, like those may have popped up today. And then on the parts that were exposed, even the new growth is dead, like frozen through. Here's another example. But then inside, because this was fully covered, I undid it. It wasn't undone during the storm. Inside, it's not much better. And the only difference is you can see where the flower buds had been. So, doesn't look like we're getting, and there's some new growth right there that didn't completely die off, and more leaves by far than the exposed area have survived. But I would say we're definitely not getting any fruit off of this. And that just gives me another reason to say, well, the next time that I'm thinking about making a shelter, I think if I make the quail a shelter, that'll be like a ground run at some point with the greenhouse siding and stuff, any form of protective anything. This is going to be potentially, if it's not toxic to them, this is going to live with them, because it needs so much more protection than I can give it. Let's go over here. There wasn't food on the American hazelnut, which I think was from Burgess, at all, but its leaves and everything did great. These weren't flowering that I'm up in the middle of and getting hit with right now. These plants weren't flowering. They were already in fruit, and their fruit set looks great. These are the Saskatoons. And these are the sour cherry. That is, the tree itself is almost completely dead. And the base of its root the base of its trunk is covered in dead man's fingers and blah, 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 but... Get off of me, bug. But, it's covered in fruit, like, as much, if not more, than it usually gets. Navigating this little spot is difficult. Yeah. Ouch. And I get poked in the head, too, while I'm doing. Another Saskatoon over here. So, one of the reasons I wasn't worried about this was because it was fruiting. The other reason is it's already to zone 3. This is zone 6. We're fine. In the first course of videoing it, I was showing that the little flower stalk, the one flower that bloomed on this plum, I didn't think it was fertile, and it wasn't, because the whole sepal and everything dropped off whenever I moved the branch to show, but that wasn't frost damage. It was in great shape. It just was never fertilized, because there was only one flower on the whole plant. So that's the plum. I think that's early July. Should be a self-fertile variety, but it needs more than one flower because they're fertilizing flowers across the plant, not just... Yeah, anyway. Here is the haskap or honeyberry, and it is in just as good condition as it was. Prior to the frost, we looked for fruit and couldn't find any. It's its first year, though, so that's okay. It had a couple flowers, so I thought I might get fruit, but it seems I didn't. Same thing with the aronia berry. It's much healthier now that I've moved it over here. It's several years old, but it was in a position where it really didn't like, and now it's happier, and so we'll probably get flowers and fruit next year. Another honeyberry, same thing. This one had a little bit of cold damage, it looks like, which is strange because they're hardy to zone 3 or 2 as well. And this is the sweet cherry. It's in just as good condition as it was. And also isn't doing much in the way of fruiting. It had maybe 1 or 2 that could end up being fruit on it that I can't find right now. Something that surprised me that I didn't protect is, look, this currant. Some of the berries froze clean through and those won't end up maturing because they're frozen through solid now, and they're going to drop off the plant. And that happened on several bunches. Not this one, but the one in the background, right here. And right here. So yeah, all over the plant we lost a few berries because it got cold, which is a shock to me, because currants are usually so hardy. I'm going to pop up here, sneak past the flopped over daffodil foliage, and show you something I couldn't show you because I had already covered it when we did the pre-frost video, and that is, this is the very first year of this columnar apple being in my yard, and there's already blooms on it. That thing is gonna be a beast. That's amazing. I'm watering in the mushrooms. I've been kind of pecking at that all day. There weren't any flowers on the yostaberry, which is disappointing. I was really hoping that I'd get flowers on that, so I could end up tasting it, but has nothing to do with the frost. They weren't there before, they're still not there, you know. Everything through here we weren't worried about. There's nothing growing here. Daffodils are always fine because they're Dutch. The ajuga ended up being perfectly fine. The same thing with the lily of the valley. They're better off than they were. And the pots down in here that have the... shoot, I forgot the word. We'll have to come back to it. But that pond plant down there that does the corn cob looking like... They look like corn dogs. Tell me the word, I can't remember, because wow, that's a brain fart. The comment it below. Anyway, this is my asparagus, and I kept harvesting it throughout. It's doing great. It had no problems with being frozen. Same thing with the lovage here, and the rhubarb, and the sage at the end. All perfectly fine. The sunchokes and the potatoes are all barely above the ground. The parsnips are doing great. They didn't care that this happened at all. Same thing with a lot of the flowers. Like, these are irises, and they're happy. The lilies are happy. And this, I was a little worried about this. These are the buffalo currant flowers. It's the only one that's flowering this year because I had them up in pots trying to figure out what I was doing with the bigger pot ones. Those look like they got fertilized, so those are probably just finished flowers. And yeah, everything else is just perfectly fine. There's the view again. I did end up covering the new grape. I said at the end of the video that I wasn't going to. And I did the same thing with the, the maypop. So, if that was going to freeze the whole way through, it didn't. The elderberries we didn't do anything about because A, they're native and adapted to this zone, and B, they don't have any flowers on them yet. They seem to be just as fine as they were. I ended up covering the maypop down here. I didn't cover anything down the cliff, and it's all fine. Nothing's wrong down there. And these plants the plants my neighbor gave me are fine. Woo, slippy, sorry. And I have to set my cage back up here. Yeah, so those are in good condition. I'll go up along here. These are also the hazelnut. They're less leafed out than the one in the back, mainly because they started their year in Wisconsin as opposed to Pittsburgh. So, but they didn't have any problems here. As you can see, they're all perfectly fine. Surprisingly, also the raspberries, which I think I was slightly worried about. These may have been at the beginning of that video, actually. Oops. But all of the buds that I was worried about freezing, but wasn't that worried because they'd just grow back, they're still budded. So that's really nice. I'm also getting strawberry blooms as of today. This bucket is making all kinds of strange noises, which is really nice. There's another one here. The kitty cat may or may not be on top of the door. And then my little nursery stock area, didn't run into any problems either. There's nothing in here cared that it froze either, so some stuff got knocked over and dug through. I'm gonna have to go back for more, oh, look at the big rusty badge bumblebee. Cute! Gonna have to go back, I think, for more of the native blackberry, because it didn't do so well. Mainly because stuff kept digging it out of the pot I put it in. And everything up along... Whoa, I'm tripping on stuff again. Oh dear, that got knocked over and everything. I don't know, can you see it? Glare is pretty hardcore here. So that was a seeded pot that I just kicked over. Yay! yeah. So I would say overall that is quite the success. The nights are going to start being more like 50s and 60s again. So I need to get the coverings off so it doesn't end up cooking whatever's inside of it. Been pretty surprised that some of the tree foliage down here scorched, but it'll make a comeback. And everything else is great. So I was worried, but the things that I needed to worry about, there wasn't anything I could have done to save them. That's the kiwi. Everything else, I lost a couple of currants out of every strand. And beyond that, nothing else seems to have gone wrong. So that's good news and good reference for future. I hope you weathered the freeze pretty well too. Even all my little seedlings did good, even the ones up in pots. I'm very happy with it. And I hope that you're happy with your garden right now too. Happy spring. It ought to be spring at this point. I think. Should be. We shall see. Take care. Thanks. Bye.